Sushan, you have to teach me how to share screen and all that.
You have permission to share.
Yes.
Yeah, Hari Neeraj, I'm beginning.
Okay.
Friends, this is a sad occasion. We are gathered here today to remember our friend, Dr. Rathnasree. Ratna, as all of us used to call her, an exemplary scientist, an astronomy educator par excellence, and above all, a kind and compassionate human being. It is difficult to accept that Ratna has left us and has begun her journey back to the stars. We at the Public Outreach and Education Committee of the Astronomical Society of India have been fortunate to have Ratna as one of the leading lights of this committee. And so it is fitting that today we are trying not only to remember her, but also trying to celebrate her work. Now, I request Professor G.C. Anupama, the current president of Astronomical Society of India, to say a few words. Anupama.
Yeah, thank you, Sushan. I'll just share my screen and yeah. So good evening, everybody. As Sushan said, today we have gathered here to celebrate Rathnasree's life and her works. Just a very brief introduction to Rathnasree and her association with the Astronomical Society of India and her work. Needless to say that the Astronomical Society of India very deeply mourns her tragic demise. She was an avid astronomy communicator and accomplished pulsar astronomer. She was pivotal in most of astronomy outreach projects of the ASI over the past couple of decades. When the ASI formally set up its Public Outreach and Education Committee in 2014, Rathnasree was the obvious and unanimous choice to be its first chair, and she had been a part of the POEC ever since. Rathnasree was a graduate student at the Theoretical Astrophysics Group at TIFR Mumbai in the late 1980s and early 1990s, where she worked in the area of stellar evolution and population synthesis with Professor Alakre. As a postdoctoral fellow at the University of Vermont, Burlington, she worked with Professor Joanna Rankin and carried out pulsar observations using the Arecibo radio telescope. Soon she moved to RRI in Bangalore as a postdoctoral fellow. We'll be hearing more about her work as a scientist from her colleagues as a part of today's proceedings. In 1996, she moved to Delhi and joined the Nehru Planetarium as a senior planetarium educator and became its director in 1999. So for the past couple of decades, she was not just a standard bearer for astronomy outreach in the National Capital Region, but she was also an inspirational figure to astronomy communicators around the country and also in other parts of the world. At the Nehru Planetarium, she started several new activities. Under her leadership, the planetarium actually became the go-to place for the undergraduate and postgraduate students around Delhi, especially the ones who wanted to do short astronomy research projects. She was the focal point for the amateur astronomy community in and around Delhi and guided them on almost all aspects of astronomy. Rathnasree is remembered fondly by all her students who benefited from her infectious enthusiasm, her humility, gentleness, kindness, and her enormous capacity to work, and most importantly, her ability to excite the youth. One of her most important contributions was her efforts towards the preservation of Jantar Mantar observatories of Raja Savai Jai Singh. And actually her work with the students to make the astronomy behind these instruments accessible to the common public, which started off as a very simple positional astronomy project, grew up and it actually evolved into the cleaning and restoration of several of the Jantar Mantar instruments. She also took upon herself to train tour guides at Delhi as well as at Jaipur on, actually teaching them the technical and the mathematical concept behind these instruments, so that they would, when they spoke to the tourists, they gave a proper scientific explanation of these instruments. And she was extremely devoted in her activities. This was Rathnasree. She also wrote numerous scholarly articles and books about the mathematics behind the Jantar Mantar instruments. And she shared her knowledge in various international conferences. And in fact, recognizing her expertise, the Archaeological Survey of India had appointed her on the committee overseeing the restoration of Jantar Mantar in Delhi. She also worked with the National Council of Science Museums to advise them on astronomy-related exhibits and activities at various science centers. She was a primary astronomy expert for all journalists around the capital for any astronomy-related events. And she was always eager and enthusiastic to explain astronomy to them and the common public in as simple a manner as possible. In the year 2018-19, that 150th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi, she ran a year-long campaign called the Bapu Khagol Mela, where she and her team visited many of the locations where Mahatma Gandhi had lived during his life, and they conducted astronomy outreach programs at each of these locations. She was very active in her work and continued that even during the pandemic times. She was very actively conducting online lectures, workshops, and discussion sessions. And I'm pretty sure this helped a lot of people who were confined to the four walls of their homes during the lockdown period. And I could also see that several of these programs were very enthusiastically participated by a lot of young people. In December 2020, she led the ASI POEC's Samantha Chandrasekhar Challenge at the time of the great conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter, where the students were encouraged to make their own cross stars and measure angular separation between the planets. She was also involved in organizing Astro Adda, a fortnightly online discussion session with the students until almost her end. Unfortunately, in early May, she caught COVID-19 infection, which very quickly overwhelmed her. And she's no more with us. She's survived by her husband, Professor Patrick Dasgupta, who's a faculty member in the Department of Physics and Astrophysics at Delhi University, her son, daughter-in-law, and a granddaughter. Rathnasree will always remain with us through her works as a scientist and as a science communicator and educationist. We deeply mourn her demise, but we will not miss her thanks to the great amount of work she's done, and her legacy will continue with the ASI. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Anupama. Now, we will start the first segment of our meeting, in which some of the people who worked directly with Rathnasree at various stages of her life would talk about the work she had done. We would start with Professor Alak Ray from TIFR Mumbai, under whose supervision Rathnasree did her PhD thesis. Alak.
Yes, I will have to share my screen. Is it now visible?
Not yet, Alak.
No, not yet. Yes.
Okay. So this is an occasion to celebrate the life and the work of Rathnasree. I will begin with a little bit of an introduction about how she came to TIFR. She came to TIFR in 1980 as a graduate student. And she's from Hyderabad. Her parental family is from the state of Andhra Pradesh. I have actually met both her parents as well as her younger brother when they visited TIFR. And Rathnasree had joined TIFR, its Department of Astronomy and Astrophysics, its current name now, at a time when we were about to go through significant evolution and changes, but she was, one of the first few, women graduate students in astronomy and physics who had gone on to become very successful scientists and academics and educationists the world over. Among the people that I remember as her classmates in the department in TIFR were Sunita Nair and Sarbani Basu. And in physics, she also had classmates as the well-known nuclear physicist, now the well-known nuclear physicist, Mahananda Dasgupta, who is now in Australia, and also Kajori Majumdar, who is now a professor in the Department of High Energy Physics. And they were all starting as beginning graduate students. Rathnasree wanted to work primarily on pulsars during her PhD program. And during this time, there were other graduate students who were, with us today, like, for example, her would-be in future husband, Patrick Dasgupta, who was then a graduate student, but now a professor of physics at Delhi University. And we remember her son, Ujjwal, who grew up in the housing colony of TIFR campus and who's currently in the US, very well, and he's very well remembered by many of my colleagues and their children. And my family members today who are present here remember them, uh, they remember all the members of this family very well. Ratna wanted to work on pulsars, but soon she launched into making a detailed computer simulation of massive stars like those found in the Large Magellanic Cloud, the home of the greatest supernova of our times, supernova 1987A. Her computer simulations reflected the state of the progenitor star sometime before they exploded, and she used these for stars both in single systems as well as in binary stellar systems. She also made predictions about pulsar populations in the Large Magellanic Cloud. She published a number of papers from her PhD thesis research, including those in Journal of Astrophysics and Astronomy, Astrophysical Journal Letters, monthly notices of Royal Astronomical Society, which are the key journals in our field. By the time she wrote her PhD thesis, she already had 2 published papers. 2 more papers were growing out of her.
Recording in progress.
2 more papers were to grow out of her PhD work while she was a postdoc at the University of Vermont with Joanna. She submitted her thesis in 1992 and then went for her postdoc with Joanna Rankin. Returning to India in 1994, did she defend her thesis, and upon returning to India, she joined the Raman Research Institute. In her PhD thesis work, and I have a slide which lists these set of papers. There are these 5 papers in which she had used the observational constraints on massive stars in the LMC for constraining models obtained by numerical simulations. These LMC observations consisted of distribution of stars in the color magnitude diagram of the Magellanic Cloud, the Large Magellanic Cloud, the observations of supernova 1987A and its progenitor star, Sunduliak 69202, and number 3, the surface abundance of certain blue supergiant stars in the LMC that appear as helium and nitrogen enriched stars. She showed that single star evolutionary models do not give good agreement with the observed features in their totality. And she went on to examine how the binary star scenario would do. A diagnostic for the mass accretion scenario for the secondary star in the supernova events of this class was that if the secondary accretes sufficient mass, it ends its life as a blue supergiant, as in the case of supernova 1987A, rather than a red supergiant star, which is expected generally for an isolated star going to supernova of the hydrogen-rich type 2 variety that was known, or that was basically the established line of thinking at that time. But supernova 1987A changed this established scenario. Her PhD work was well recognized in the stellar evolution community worldwide. Her papers are cited in review articles by well-known and respected peers in North America, Europe, and in Japan. They also acted as springboard for further work in this field, including in India, such as the work on supernova 1993J, which we undertook with A.P. Singh and Firoza Sutaria. During her postdoctoral studies at the University of Vermont, she used the remarkable astronomical asset, the Arecibo Radio Telescope in Puerto Rico, to study and observe radio pulsars. And hopefully, Joanna Rankin, who is present with us today, will tell us more about it. It was during her role as the director of the Nehru Planetarium, located in the national capital of India, that her important role of an educator in the informal sector outside of academia had blossomed and flourished. Rathnasree turned the planetarium into a hub of activities for younger folks with interest in astronomy and science in general. She developed with great aplomb the kind of educational program that was fun, making the Delhi Planetarium the most important planetarium in the country. She worked with a large number of young students, amateur astronomers, and members of the public to make the understanding of science and curiosity-driven universal citizen science activity. She had tremendous potential of the astronomical heritage sites, which has been already referred to some extent, in particular related to the instruments at the Jantar Mantar Observatory. I have a photograph of her here, which I'd just like to briefly turn to. Here she is inside the Jaiprakash Yantra. No, I don't know whether it can be fully seen. Yeah, she's pointing towards the markings and both halves of the instrument. And instruments in Delhi Planetarium. She had recently led a book discussion about the Jantar Mantar Observatory in Delhi and in Jaipur with Professor Barry Perlis of Cornell University. And this book, titled Celestial Mirror, the Astronomical Observatories of Jai-Singh II, is actually available in YouTube, and it's really wonderful viewing and listening to the experts talking about the instruments. I highly recommend people to look at this YouTube site. So she, along with her husband Patrick Dasgupta, who is now at Delhi University, and Anurag Garg from Planetarium, made a quantitative study of the accuracy of star marker positions on the historical astrolabes. In particular, they studied two historical astrolabes, presumably from Maharaja Jai Singh's Jaipur workshop for the astrolabes. Their method was an important pathfinder for the study of historical instruments with laminar structure, which may be currently too fragile for actually handling or for quantitative measurements. More recently, Rathnasree, Otri Mukhopadhyay of Shaha Institute, and I were working on a history of science project on Meghnad Shaha, Homi Bhabha, and the early stages of atomic research in India. A good deal of archival material on the subject are available in the TIFR archives, Meghnad Shaha archives, and the Nehru Memorial Museum and Library archives. Rathnasree was, in fact, the key member of our collaboration who sourced much of the critical material for this project from the Nehru Memorial Library, which is the apex institution with which Nehru Planetarium works. Rathnasree was a highly motivated researcher, meticulous in the details of her research methods, and a vibrant person. Yet at the same time, she was a low-key individual, easy to get along with. Her untimely demise in the dark times that our nation and the world is currently engulfed in is a cruel blow to the Indian astronomical research and education community and for public understanding of science. It is an enormous loss for her family, her colleagues, and her friends. Her presence will be sorely missed, and we send our sympathies to her immediate family members and to all our colleagues. I just want to just go through another of the two of the photographs that I have of her quickly. I know I'm doing this late. I'm already over my time. I was writing with Ratna and Potri Mukhopadhyay, and it will be submitted, and it will be submitted in all three of our names. And here is all of us from Nehru Planetarium and her colleagues at the Nehru Planetarium during a visit I had made in 2017. And some of these colleagues, I presume, are together with us today, and we would look forward to their reminiscences of this wonderful person, Ratna. Thank you.
Thank you, Alak, for telling us about the early days of Ratna's scientific career and also the later days. Thank you so much. Now, I invite Professor Joanna Rankin from University of Vermont, with whom Ratna did her first postdoctoral work. Joanna?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Thank you all for organizing this wonderful event. It is certainly a sad occasion, a very sad occasion, and we all mourn the loss of Rathnasree. I want to talk about her from my experience a long time ago. I'm pretty sure that I first met Rathnasree at the winter school in 1991 at NCRA. And we talked after I had made some discussion of pulsars at that time. And I don't remember exactly how it developed that she came as a postdoc. Maybe she wrote me and asked if I had a position, and it turned out that I did. And so she arrived in the fall of 1992. And in thinking about her time with us here, how different the world was then. Communication was expensive and fractured and unreliable, and how incredibly courageous it was of Rathnasree to accept a position halfway around the world in a small state at a small university with a person that she'd probably only met once or twice. I can't remember. She arrived with her husband Patrick and her son, who we then called Panu, and Patrick got her settled and then went back to India, and she was left in Burlington, Vermont, with very few resources to take care of her son. I'm not sure she ever had childcare. So her work was done between the hours of 8 or so in the morning when Panu went to school and 3:30 or so in the afternoon. And she used every single minute. She was incredibly dedicated and creative in the ways that she used her time to make things happen here. We were at the beginning of a new polarimetry project with the Arecibo Observatory. We didn't have very many results at that point. And so those few papers which Rathnasree published while she was here were completely her own creativity in terms of how to get a few early results out of the work that we were doing. And I have great respect for her creativity in that period, and of course all the assistance that she gave me in getting this program going, which had more results later, more results actually when we were working together at the Raman Institute. Rathnasree arrived with a suitcase full of a few saris and many, many, many bottles of her mother's pickles. And she was happy, pretty happy here in Vermont, as long as she had a good supply of her mother's pickles. But after about a year, she ran out of her mother's pickles and she couldn't find anything to sustain her that was interestingly hot. And fortunately, some of her colleagues came to visit her and brought her another supply of her mother's pickles, and she was able to spend another 6 months here in Vermont while her supply lasted. I think one of the high points, probably the high point of her time here, was our trip to the Arecibo Observatory in October 1992. And if I can share the screen, I have
no, I'll try one more time. Okay. Oh, lovely.
So there are here is Ratna on the triangle at the Arecibo Observatory with two other visitors who happened to be here at the same time, Vera Izvekova and Svetlana Suleimanova from the Pushchino Observatory in what's now Russia. And they're walking up from the central rotary joint of the observatory and looking out over the mountains of Puerto Rico, as you can see. And oh, that didn't work. Let's see. Yeah, please. And then here we are in the control room. Again, Vera Izvekova and Svetlana Suleimanova and another student who was there with us from University of Vermont, Amy Carlo. And one can see Ratna's infectious smile and enthusiasm in this period. We were there for nearly a month. We were alternating using the telescope with some of the first observations of the SETI crew, Jill Tarter, and they were trying out their efforts to look for extraterrestrial life. So we had observations most days for a good part of that month, and then pretty much the observatory closed down for its second upgrading that produced the Gregorian reflector. I might just close with one other wonderful event of Rathnasree's visit. Ratna didn't have much time, but away from research and taking care of Panu, but she was always eager to do whatever she could in those with those constraints, and somehow or another she managed to stay warm. I guess we advised her about how to stay warm in a Vermont winter, and she was eager to go skiing, cross-country skiing. But how did we arrange that with Panu, and how did he stay warm and how did she stay warm? So on the appointed day, it was a very cold day, we went up to the mountains and we rented skis for her. I had skis, and we rented a sleigh for Panu that I pulled like a horse. And so with I wish I had a photograph of this, but of course there was no one there to take it. So I was skiing with the harness around my waist, and Ratna was on skis for the very first time in her life. And I don't think she ever fell. I think we skied for an hour or so until Panu got too cold. But it just shows her incredible enthusiasm, joy in life, and taking care to have every possible experience that she could have. What a wonderful person. And I so salute all she went on to accomplish there that others are reporting. And my sincere condolences to Patrick, to Ujval, and to all of her dear friends and colleagues there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joanna. And thank you, Mary, for joining us. Thank you very much for your kind words. Now, I request
Recording
Professor
stopped.
Avinash Deshpande to talk about Ratna's time at RRI Bangalore. Desh.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes.
Yeah, let me share the screen. Yeah, this is indeed an unbearable loss, and I have to pretend as if, I'm sitting next to Rathnasree and trying to understand her work when I went through the papers, which I had gone through earlier, but it was revealing each time one read through the papers. And so what I'm going to do is share with you Rathnasree's incisive looks at pulsar radio emission, which was largely the work that she did with Joanna, and also with the Russian pulsaris that you saw in one of the photos Joanna showed. So after her stint at Vermont, she had joined RRI, and you will hear more about her activities at RRI in reminiscences. But let me mention only a few of several things that she did, and which have great impact on things which are not yet fully appreciated, and hopefully people will revisit these as much as she revisited this problem of approach to stability of average pulses after almost 2 decades after the initial work on it, soon after the pulsar discoveries. And what she was trying to look at was to see how long it takes for the pulsar profile to stabilize to its characteristics, nature of intensity variation that we identify the pulsar by. This does not happen, as you can see from this figure on the side, that pulsars have very erratic behavior, and none of the single pulses look anything like the average pulse, which is the signature of the pulsar. And she studied this aspect in such great detail that anybody who wishes to revisit this question will have to necessarily go through the detailed work that she did. So of course, this aspect is fundamental to pulsar timing, an aspect that has not been so clearly realized by many people. And so what she did was to study a large number of pulsars, study their timescales on which they attain stability in their average pulse profile, and try to probe if these timescales depended on anything that is associated with standard pulsar properties like magnetic field and its viewing geometry, and so on and so forth. And so this already has a wealth of data and results, which I always recommend people to go through whenever they want to begin to understand the average characteristics of pulsars and how that is attained, what time scales one will do this. And this is relevant to choosing even the integration time that you would like to give before you can ask what the average arrival time of the pulse is. In a very, another inspired work that she did was to look at the polarization modes and their separations. It turns out that pulsars have their well-defined polarization characteristics in most cases, but they switch between that description and something that is exactly orthogonal to the orientation described by one standard template. And they do that as is shown in this figure here. While they do that, they of course leave an imprint of this switch, and the fact that there exists these two modes all the time practically, which superpose and decide what the resultant polarization one is going to see. And so by doing this in very early days, the work actually showed that one can reveal hidden components of the emission profile, much like in one of these special cases that they studied. And it suddenly begins to clarify otherwise obscure aspects of the morphology of the pulsar emission. The mode changes in polarizations also have their counterparts in profile shapes. We normally say that pulsar has a signature profile. Apparently, they seem to have two signatures, which was noticed in certain cases early on. And a classic example of that was studied by Rathnasree, and the two distinct signatures are shown here, seen at various frequencies. And what This was the Russian pulsar that was studied in great depth. And it is thanks to her recommendation that this being a good drifter, that I played with this data, and that led to interesting pieces of work with Joanna subsequently. So I fondly remember all the times her mentioning any findings that she came across enthusiastically, and you know, that generated more and more interest for me in pulsar emission that I entirely owe to her interaction. Now, all these works and more that I have not mentioned, actually, if you go through them as objectively as anybody can, you notice that these are timeless guides to anyone, regardless of their age, be it youngsters or already experienced people, to see what messages have been distilled out with such a careful and detailed look at the pulsars. So regardless of you know, the fact that Rathnasree did not continue to do that active work in pulsar emission, later the impact of her work is immense. I would like to end with the level of detail and the keen observations that she possessed through an example of what I would call a mode changing. We were fortunate to be her neighbors, and my daughter Akshaya and her son Pannu found in each other a person to, a friend to play with, which was otherwise not the case in the building. And while they were enjoying their times together, and we were relishing the fact that they had somebody to play with, Rathnasree, who used to watch them playing, noticed something which almost all of us would have missed. And she said, they've been playing very well, enjoying each other's company. But do you notice something very strange? They have not fought with each other yet, you know. And so that really triggered us to realize that, yes, indeed, this is not normal for kids of similar age, to something unusual about this. And equally excitingly, she came one day and said, you know, Desh, Ranjana, they have fought, you know, and we actually celebrated that day. And that was Rathnasree. We're going to miss you, Rathnasree, dearly. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Desh, very much for your kind words. Now, we are in a segment when we are talking about Ratna's work, but Professor Ajit Kemhabi need to leave for some other work, so he would be speaking at this moment, and we'll continue with this segment after that. Ajit.
Thank you, Susan. Susan, can you hear me, please?
Yes.
All right. So I'll be very brief. I first met Rathnasree when she was a student of Professor Alak Rai at TIFR in the mid-1980s. I was immediately struck by how bright, quiet, and soft-spoken she was, and how much she was committed to astronomy. The enduring image of Ratna I have in mind is the way in which she participated in discussions, quietly taking in everything, while rapidly plaiting her hair, an endearing habit that she continued to have right to the end. My early impressions of Ratna were only strengthened over the years as she developed into an accomplished astrophysicist and then morphed into one of the most brilliant and productive public outreach persons in the country. She did her work as director of the Nehru Planetarium in New Delhi and through the Public Outreach and Education Committee of the ASI, of which she was the first chairperson. She set up many of the activities of the POEC, which have now become so valuable and productive, leading from the front with astonishing enthusiasm and power in all her interactions with the public. Some years ago, she took me on a guided tour of Jantar Mantar in Jaipur in the hot midday sun, explaining with great clarity and depth the functions of each instrument, demonstrating skillfully how they could be used wherever that was possible. As usual, I was trying to calm her fervor a bit, worrying for how long the energy would last. She seemingly had infinite reserves and could go on and on untiringly. But now she is laid to rest, and we are all forever deprived of her. She and her husband Patrick made a wonderful pair, so fully devoted to science and so humble. I will continue to remember Ratna as a young postdoc, going around the world in the company of her little son, who sat at the back of the hall, waiting for his mother to finish her work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ajit. Thank you for those kind words. And now I invite Anurag Arora to talk about Ratna's work at Nehru Planetarium and also about the Bapu Khagol Mela that she carried on her own enthusiasm. Anurag, please.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible.
So, good evening, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank the POAC and the ASI to invite me to this commemoration and tribute to our late director, Dr. Rathnasree. My name is Anurag Arora, and I work as an administrative officer in the Nehru Planetarium, which is essentially under Nehru Memorial Museum and Library, which is an autonomous body of the Ministry of Culture. Everybody must be knowing that. I got the news of demise of Dr. Rathnasree, or DNP as we used to call her fondly. DNP stands for Director Nehru Planetarium. So it was early morning on the 9th at around 8 a.m. I got the news, and I was completely devastated as I was still mourning the demise of my father on 7th from this dreaded COVID only. So one of her cousin called me, and I was crying, and actually he told me to ask for help, and then he started consoling me. So that was the relation that I had with ma'am. Nowadays, what it is generally seen that we tend to spend more time in more working hours, more time in office rather than at home. So me spending more time with ma'am than at home was very natural. And as she used to stay very near to my house, so from past 1 year, I was the one who was picking her up from her home and taking to office and then dropping her back, as there was COVID everywhere, and she was a little not very keen on taking metro or cabs or anything like that. So she was very careful all this while, but somehow last month I also contracted the same COVID, and I stopped going to office. And probably then she must be taking some public transport, and where she contracted this virus, and ultimately it took her away from all of us. Well, I had joined Planetarium in 2016, and since then I have seen ma'am working tirelessly in the field of astronomy education for school and college students. She was a total public outreach person, and in the field during lectures, she used to become a child yearning to teach and learn at the same time. So during her years as director in the planetarium, she had made this planetarium as city's most visited icon for school and college students, and even for the general public who had come to Delhi on recreational trips. So with so much effort and enthusiasm, she had created so many new astronomy-based programs in the planetarium. Since till 2010, we were running these mechanical instruments for showing our programs. But in 2010, the planetarium got a very good facelift during the Commonwealth Games, and we had our own digital system. And all in all, these digital systems would come with packaged programs designed by companies. So she was not very happy using those programs like Ultimate Universe or other programs that we still have. So she came up with an idea of creating our own programs using the SkyScan system that was installed in the planetarium in 2010. And very well, she created solar system, a program on pulsars, program on Jantar Mantar, program on Chandrayaan, the probes, and a lot many. So she was very keen in that area. She was very keen that public should know about Indian astronomy as well. It's not only about what NASA or maybe the Russian agencies are doing. So we are still running those programs in planetarium that was created in both Hindi and English by Dr. Rathnasree. And that's our most popular program as well, the solar system program. Well, she always fondly used to tell me, okay, as an administrative officer, you please handle all the administrative work and let me concentrate on my outreach works, which give her a kind of peace. Wherever she used to go, she used to become a child, associating, talking to children, solving their queries. She used to ask them, keep on asking more and more questions. I'm ready to answer everything. So the kind of interest that a child also develops by talking to ma'am was amazing. I will, as I am speaking about her days in the planetarium and Bapu Khagol Mela, so I'll mix both of them. So if I talk about Bapu Khagol Mela, we got this opportunity in 2018 when Ministry told NMML, that is the Nehru Memorial Museum and Library, to come up with some ideas of celebrating the 150th birth anniversary of Gandhiji. Now, who would have thought that ma'am would come up with an idea of associating astronomy and Gandhiji? Like Gandhiji, we always, if we talk about him, we always talk about him like a father of the nation or a person who has led us to the freedom. But nobody can think that Gandhiji is also associated with astronomy. So she read all the selected works of Gandhiji. She came up with the scripts wherein in 1930 and between 1930 and 32, where he was staying in the Yarwada jail in Pune. He has spoken a lot about astronomy, about stars, planets, the constellations. So nobody knew about it. So the ministry really liked the idea that it is something new that we are associating Gandhiji with astronomy. And she then again came up with an idea that we will celebrate it as Bapu Khagol Mela, celebrating Bapu in astronomy. And we will do this Bapu Khagol Mela at places where Gandhiji had visited in his times, starting from 1910s till he died in 1947. So we came up with a list of cities all over India where he had traveled. We planned accordingly to start with. We started with Porbandar, and then one by one we covered Goa. We went to South. In Tamil Nadu, we covered Uti, Coimbatore, Madurai. One interesting incident that I'll tell you about doing a Bapu Khagol Mela in a place called Dindigal in Tamil Nadu. We were doing this in a public park where people are coming and going for evening walks. So we were doing a night sky watch. We took our 6-inch telescope and we had installed there. So while we were doing the installation, people were coming and going and they were curious about what we are doing. So as soon as the installation was done, the moon was there, the Mars was there. So she never had any forms like I'm the director of planetarium. So she used to go to people and say, "आप please आइए, ये free में हम दिखा रहे हैं." So she was the kind of personality, very humble, very down to earth. We were a little shy. How can we go and talk to people and tell them to come? But she was always कि आप आइए देखिए, आपको कुछ पूछना है, आपको मैं बताती हूँ कि मून में क्या क्या दिख रहा है, मून का कौन सा पार्ट दिख रहा है, कौन से क्रेटर्स नजर आ रहे हैं. So while they are looking through the telescope, she always used to have an app of moon in her phone, and the people who are standing in the queue, she's explaining the craters of the moon using her app. So that kind of enthusiasm she had always. This is just one incident I'm talking about, but there are numerous similar incidences wherever we have did this Bapu Khagol Mela. I have traveled her extensively to around 20-25 places while doing this Bapu Khagol Mela, and at the same time we did this around in 60 places. So whenever we used to plan to go to some place, she was always enthusiastically telling me, okay, I'll find a local partner there. I'll find the place to live. You take care of the bookings, travel bookings, and the local travel. So because she was very happy in talking to people, in devising strategies, how we can tell more about astronomy and related to Gandhiji. So there are numerous occasions where we had so many big crowds coming in, seeing the night sky through telescopes, or ma'am lecturing them on general astronomy. So these are the, I really fondly remember those time and those years where we did this 1.5 year with this Bapu Khagol Mela. And one more thing, at the planetarium, whenever there is an event, upcoming event, be it the transit of Venus, be it any lunar or solar eclipses, she was the first to start planning 6 months before the event. How are we going to do it at the planetarium? How are we going to reach to general public, telling about the eclipses, the solar eclipse. So during one of the eclipses of December 26th, last year, we traveled again to south, because the southern belt where the eclipse was full, there was a full eclipse, and in Delhi there was some 70-75% visibility. So we traveled again to south. We visited a lot of schools. We told them we told the children about safe methods of viewing the solar eclipse. We had this solar projection box which she has devised during her days in the planetarium. So there were a lot of things. The time is short, so a lot of things we can talk about her. I had only 5-6 years to work with her, but I am really proud to say that she was a great mentor. She was the one who taught us so many things, and faced everything with a smile. So all in all, I can say is that I have lost a great mentor and guide at the planetarium. At work, she had been a formidable leader and have motivated me to face challenges head on. And even her commitment to work was unmatchable. And indeed, it is a great loss to the planetarium and the entire astronomy planetarium community. She had always put much effort into creating a happy work environment at the planetarium. And as it is said that the show must go on, so we at the planetarium would definitely take her legacy forward. We would also seek definite help from the POEC in future in conducting more and more astronomy-based programs, because she always used to tell me, the eminent speakers and the audience that is there today, I have heard everybody's name from her mouth, but I have not met them personally. But I'll be definitely in touch. All the staff members at the planetarium are mourning her death. They have worked. We have staff members who have at the planetarium from the very beginning of the planetarium, from 1984 as well. So they have seen how she had joined the planetarium, how she had taken the planetarium forward. So there are a lot of people, we have been discussing all this while in our groups, that without madam, how will we take it forward, how the planetarium will function. But as it is said, the show must go on. So we'll definitely find out a way. So in the end, I would just say that I have all the time benefited from her warmth and kindness, and she will always remain in my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your insight into Ratna's work at the planetarium. So we will move forward now. And before we do so, I would like to remind every speaker that we have already spoken for about an hour, and we really want to talk so much. There is so much to talk about Ratna, but because there are so many people who would like to share their thoughts, like to share their words, we would, all of us should try to listen a little.
जाके आ जाओ हाँ
So now I request Mr. Ajay Talwar to come in and talk about Ratna's work with the Amateur Astronomy Society of Delhi.
Thank you. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, yes, we can.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here, and I am joined by my wife, Neelam, and my son is also around, who are attending this session. The Amateur Astronomers Association of Delhi has lost its president, a well-wisher, contributor, supporter, patron, and a lot more. Dr. Rathnasree has left us early, but it was not her time to go away. This is how we would remember her. You can see in the picture, she is happy, she's with her students, and she's at Jantar Mantar. Always trying to inspire and ignite a passion for astronomy in them. I remember an incident during the 2019 annular solar eclipse. She had carried this box with her to Radio Astronomy Center, and one day before the eclipse, she had put it up over there, and we were at Ooty, which was expected to be clear. She had a commitment at Coimbatore in a school with students, which was expected to be cloudy. Guess where she was? She left Ooty and she went to Coimbatore, fully expecting that the eclipse would not be visible, but she would be with students and trying to inspire them. AAA Sunday sessions were always encouraged by Dr. Rathnasree. We would always see her persuading about making time for us inside the Sky Theatre, despite being a busy Sunday at the planetarium. We also fondly remember the large tray of samosas that used to appear from nowhere for us. Raghu Kalra, secretary of AAA, remembers her fondness for old Hindi songs, which made way in conversations about astronomy quite often. She would melodiously sing, Aadha hai Chandrama, Aadhi hai Raat, and then would go on to explain the astronomical relation of how the half moon rises or sets around midnight. AAA built its active symbiotic relationship with the planetarium. A public observation would be announced and we would join in with all our telescope resources, managing the public observation with her. Some of the prominent public observations that we did together were the Mercury transit in 2003, Venus transit in 2004, which was a huge success. Solar System Marathon in 2007, Mars occultation, supermoon, so many other observations we did together. One of the incidents that I distinctly remember, which happened during the Solar System Marathon, on 2nd June 2007, all of the planets would be visible during the course of the night. AAA and the planetarium together had planned a grand night of observation. We had gathered about a dozen large telescopes and binoculars on the Teen Murti lawns and made arrangements for 250 registered visitors to be fully engaged and interacting in the marathon. The marathon event got huge publicity all over Delhi. There was a crowd of about 1,000 unregistered visitors outside the Teen Murti gate, demanding entry to the program and being unruly about it. So what do we do now? Dr. Rathnasree, along with one amateur and a staff, went out the gate with 2 telescopes. She pacified the 1,000-strong crowd with views of the planets. She stood ground for about 2 hours till everyone present was satisfied. Karthik remembers his interaction with Dr. Rathnasree at one of the public observations at Teen Murti. When the planetarium Celestron 14-inch large telescope was being unveiled for the first time, Karthik has taken his 8-inch telescope, but he vividly remembers that she was more excited about the small telescope that Karthik had brought and was not bothered too much about the large telescope that was there being unveiled. Vishnu Rathinam, treasurer of AAA, remembers the passion and energy she had for astronomy. Any mention of potential project and activities would lift her from the inertia of mundane office administration to a place of excitement and high energy. The idea giver might forget, but she won't. Vishnu also remembers that her study and public outreach work on the Jantar Mantar is nothing short of legendary. Another thing, her crusade about light pollution created awareness in a largely understated and dismissive domain. Chandan of AAA recalls that he has always been fascinated by her love for astronomy in general and pulsars in particular. Her energy was contagious, especially when used to take a group of students to Jantar Mantar trips. She has been a great source of inspiration for young astronomy enthusiasts and students. Personally, for me, my wife Neelam and my son Arjun, we have lost a dear friend, a guide, a mentor. She was a caring lady. She cared for her staff. She cared for members of AAA. She cared towards the visitors of the planetarium. A special incident which is etched in my mind, my two sons, Arjun and Nakul, and Dr. Rathnasree were quite fond of each other, always meeting at the planetarium. Once, my younger son, his entire class from the school went on an official visit to the planetarium, and she was conducting the special session for them. Nakul immediately ran out to her and sat in her lap for the entire duration of the show while she conducted it. She indulged with Nakul and Arjun, and she was their candy auntie. She called us as the astronomer family of Delhi. Well, she has left behind a legacy of ideas and work to be fulfilled by everyone she knew. It is but obvious that she will continue to radiate inspiration much like her beloved pulsars. Our sincere condolences to Professor Das Gupta and Ujjwal from all of us. She may have left us, but her caring attitude, her efforts, contribution, her persona will not be forgotten amongst the amateur astronomers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Talwar, for your words that gave us a view of Ratna's work with the Amateur Astronomical Society. Now we call upon Ms. Megha Rajura to talk about her work on Jantar Mantar. Megha. Hello. Hello, Megha, are you speaking?
Maybe we can come back to her, Sushant.
Yeah, I think that would be better because we do not get any response. Okay, so now I would invite Dr. Devangsh Agarwal to talk about student mentorship. So Devangsh went from being a project student with Ratna to be an astronomer, a fully fledged astronomer now. So Devangsh.
Thanks. So yeah, a lot of you who are in the call today, I've worked with, I've met just because. So I started working with Rathnasree about a decade ago. I met her in 2011, and I was a KVPY fellow, so I had to do a project. So I went to Nehru Planetarium to work with her, and so that's how our journey began. And she said that let's work on pulsars, and I didn't know much about astronomy back then, but I was keen to learn, so I agreed with that. But you could always see a spark of excitement in her eyes whenever she talked about pulsars. The summer of 2011. Also the century's longest lunar eclipse, and as previous people before me just talked about her commitment towards all the astronomical events, she organized a huge event which I think was attended by several hundred people. There were, I think, 8 or 9 telescopes. There were fun-filled activities throughout the night, and ma'am was there organizing all this. All the activities, teaching the public about eclipse, phases of moon, but most importantly, also breaking superstitions regarding eclipses with science, kindness, and compassion. During that summer, many students came and worked with her on various projects. These projects ranged from a day to a week for school kids, or month-long projects for for programs like Yuvadhara, Nehru Youth Internship. And she was truly gifted in the art of delivering knowledge to a wide variety of students in an individually custom wrapped methods, which worked for each one of us. And as Megha will also mention, she was a real foodie. So whenever she was in office, you could actually always smell some nice food. And she kept us well fed as if we were her own children. She was very hands-on person when it came to teaching. So you could always see innovative ideas coming from her. She always wanted students to work with data. Once she called me and was like, Devansh, let's do one thing. Let's put the whole TGS sky survey on the planetarium dome, and so that people can see what the radio sky looks like. In 2017, she called me like, hey, we are organizing a coding camp over here in astronomy, and we would like if you can give us some pulsar data from one of the telescopes here in US, and maybe give a Python tutorial on how to do these things. So I readily agreed, gave a talk and a tutorial for about 2 hours. And for those 2 hours, she sat over there, helped each and every student understand what the data is, how pulsars are, how to do data analysis. And her patience and commitment to encourage and support children were just unmatched. Now, even at her age, she was always learning. So she was like, one of these days, I'm going to sit with you and I'm going to learn Python. And I heard this, I think about 5 years, we just never got time to sort of sit down and do Python stuff. She was a skillful yet passionate teacher who was always patient and kind with us as her students. And today, a lot of us are astronomers and scientists, and she devoted all of her time and energy to make us what we are. No matter how much she loved us, and no matter how much she loved astronomy and how tirelessly she worked and expertly she taught, she touched our hearts in extraordinary ways that we can never accurately or fully explain with words. So that's all I have. We'll always remember her. We'll always carry her legacy forward.
Thank you, Devangsh. Thank you for joining us and sharing your thoughts. Megha, your slides are still being shared. Are you ready to speak? I am not getting any response from Megha. So we would move to Dr. B.S. Shailaja, who would be talking about dome projections, medieval astronomy, that part of Rathnasree's work. Dr. Shailaja?
Yes, I'm ready.
Yeah, please go ahead.
We have really missed a great person, a great individual, and we have heard a lot about her work as the educator, as a science communicator. I know her from different angles other than these two. As a person who was producing planetarium programs, that is one thing. And the other is her contribution to the study of history of astronomy. We had a lot of discussions on various topics of interest. In fact, the first one we started with was an old medieval text by Kamalakara Bhatta, where he had described how the transit of Venus would look. And we were working on what could have been the method of observations they would have followed for that, and so on. So she was greatly interested in that. And my brief visits to the planetarium, she would schedule 1 hour towards history of astronomy, 1 hour for planetarium program production, and a third one for new ideas and educational outreach, so that not a single minute of my stay there was wasted. And we had a lot of things in common to share. And it could be the birth centenary of Meghnad Saha, or it could be the discovery of TRAPPIST extrasolar planets, or it could be Cassini's closure. Any of these themes, she would immediately want me to give a talk, and she would assemble a group of enthusiastic students with whom we will discuss and share ideas, and she would get new ideas to make a planetarium program, a small 5-minute clip or something like that using these ideas. So it was very interesting to talk to her, and I really miss all those things. Her first, my first meeting with her was when they had just started getting the new planetarium projector. Before that, whatever Dr. Nirupama Raghavan had carried forward, that brought in, she had carried forward. So they were working with slides, they were working with audio systems which were not synchronized. The same kind of trouble we had at the Bangalore planetarium. And so how to make it more efficient and more interactive, that was the theme we were working. But the moment she got the new projectors, she was playing it with it like a child. Within a few months she mastered it, and then she was there working out new ideas. And I don't think there was any constraint on her for time or enthusiasm or anything. So she would always come up with new ideas. So that's where she tried to entangle history of astronomy with the planetarium. And when I showed her the astrolabe, which had the marking of the supernova, immediately she wanted to project it onto the sky, inside the sky theater, and measure with what accuracy they would have marked the position of the supernova. This was something unimaginable. I don't think even the planetarium manufacturers would have thought about it, that the planetarium projector can be used for this purpose. So she made a detailed study of several astrolabes, the star dials of the several astrolabes. It is the dials are made by projecting the star onto the table, let's say. But now she's projecting it back and trying to measure with what accuracies they would have, marked it, what could have been the tool they would have used for measuring these angles. This is something totally different, a new idea. And I found that she was always coming with new ideas like this whenever it came to making the programs or making the observations of Jantar Mantar to be useful for the purpose of education and communication. So naturally, the Archaeological Survey of India made her the chairman of that committee, for which I was also present there. They were planning to put a mosaic scale all along, and then they wanted to establish that because the condition of the scales was going bad. But she was very much against it, and she proved her point, saying that if you put a mosaic or marble pieces of marble as mosaic scale, then the accuracy of measurement will be gone. She was very putting forward her arguments very strongly. I think finally the ASI had to take back the idea of putting marble there, but I don't know now what would happen. So like this, there were so many new ideas which she had, and she would not miss a single occasion which is related to the sky to be used for communication purposes or for educational purposes. And she was using the planetarium projector, I should say single-handedly, because she did not have a team. I think her constraints were not only on human resources, but also on the finance. I hope the planetarium will look into that aspect, because what she was doing single-handedly now will have to be carried forward by a team. So music, she would come up with her own music themes. Script, she would write the script and she would share it with people and get new ideas and convert them into planetarium programs. And voice, she would record with her own voice, or she would ask somebody else to read it out for her. And what about the camera? She had a simple camera with her, and that itself she would use. And the first program she made was on Jantar Mantar. So when I pointed out to her saying that the scales are too much, and then it appears as though we are inside a tunnel when we are standing next to Samrat Yantra, she agreed with the idea, and immediately within 24 hours she was able to readjust the images so that that kind of feeling is not there among the viewers. So she was always receptive to new ideas, open to discussions, and what a planetarium projector can do. I think she had achieved it single-handedly. And now it is for the Nehru Planetarium to carry forward the legacy. I hope they will do and continue to do good programs. And we have lost an educationist, a good science communicator, a planetarium educator, all right. But I have lost a good friend. I have only one photo. We have worked together almost for a decade, but unfortunately, I do not have any photograph of her with me. I have only one photo which I would like to share. This one. Are you able to see this photograph? This was taken in Ujjain.
We can't see the photograph yet.
Not yet. Okay. Okay. Now are you able to see? This is yeah. I'm sharing. This is with Ajay Talwar and Bhupesh Saxena. This was taken in Ujjain when that new telescope was inaugurated. And this is the only photo I have her with me. Although we have worked for so many programs together, it was a pleasure talking to her, discussing with her, and I miss all that. I'm sure all of you also are feeling the same thing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shailaja, for telling us about your work together. And now we have the last person to speak in this segment. Dr. Neeraj Mohan would speak about her work with the POEC.
Actually, Megha just rebooted her system and she's come back online. So Harvinder, if you can make her co-host again, maybe we can get Megha to speak about Jantar Mantar now, and then I can go after that.
Thank you, Neeraj. I'm sorry, it just happened that my system had some issue, and I just rebooted it. So thanks again. I hope I'm audible now.
Yes,
you are audible.
Yes.
Thank you, thanks again. So Dr. Rathnasree, and I mean, she was my mentor for more than 13 years. And she was very versatile. Her knowledge wasn't limited to just science or astrophysics. She had kept an interest in history. And as much as I got to know her, she was very artistic. So there isn't enough time, to say everything about her, but I'll briefly talk about her and my association. So, I mean, most of us grew up watching her on television during every celestial event. So that was the same thing for me. And from afar, from our planetarium visits, I met her personally in the summer of 2008, and I never thought that she would be so friendly. And knowing that I'm a BSc physics student, she immediately asked me to join AAA Delhi. And within a few months, she started, teaching me about about Jantar Mantar Observatory. And even being born in Delhi, I never knew that Jantar Mantar is more than just a sundial, and that we can actually use it for astronomical observations. So the calibration work was already going on since 2004, measuring for errors and matching them with the NASA's ephemeris. So after I joined her as a project student, from then, ma'am and I started working specifically on Ramyantra. And for a decade, almost every year on winter solstice, ma'am and I took readings. And she would actually come there with me. And sometimes, if she's not available for a duration of the day, she would send some planetarium staff for help. And slowly, students also started joining us. So she was very particular about the peculiarities while taking the data, that we will use a clock, a digital clock. She will make one of us go to NPL and sync it from there. And she will keep telling us, no data manipulation, no data manipulation. So all these pictures that I've got today, these were actually in my drive. She only gave these to me for one of the projects that we were working on. Unfortunately, it's never going to be over now. And slowly, we were also presenting our progress through posters at PROAM, ASI meetings. And then we were finally able to publish some of the results. So apart from Delhi Jantar Mantar, she also took readings at Varanasi, Jaipur, Ujjain. I mean, she was in love with the Indian astronomical heritage. And I remember how enthusiastically she would talk about Raja Savai Jai Singh's work and how it all was inspired from Ulu Beg's observatory in Samarkand, which is present-day Uzbekistan. And sundials all over Delhi and outside had her attention. Firoz Shah Kotla, one of the monuments in University of Delhi North Campus, even Chausat Yogini. So she would sit in her office and talk about how new projects can be taken up, student projects for this thing. So she was always making that scientific bridge between past and present. And unfortunately, I could never go to any of these observatories with her due to my academic calendar. And I think I would always regret that. She actually made positional astronomy so easy. She created a way to an open lab for us to visualize the concepts. And like Anurag sir also said that she was making planetarium programs, and she created a planetarium program on Jantar Mantar. And there was this Khagol Mela at the observatory, I remember many years back. And I think it was during that we saw Venus in daytime. So this is one of her picture where she's trying to find Venus in the Ramyantra observatory. And many times, if there's a lack of hardware or a tool, she would just say, "Arey, chalo, kuch jugaad karte hain. Let's get a hula hoop or wires or bangles, anything that would help her teach her students." So she was a woman scientist in India who had reached the commoner through her tireless efforts. And she had spread science education by breaking myths, stereotypes across the nation. So just like a tour guide, she would explain anyone and everyone. Like Anurag sir was also telling, if there is some passerby taking a peek of what is happening, she would actually request them, hum batate hain, ye kaise kaam karta hai, yahan pe kya hota hai, and then she's going to use some very basic Hindi words for anyone to grasp the use of this observatory. And I remember when we used to go to the observatory, usually we used to take observation during winters. We would reach there late, but she'll be on time, she'll be before time. And it'll be a foggy, windy, early morning, 8 o'clock, and we will be shivering in our jackets and coats, and she'll be there just standing in one shawl and sweater and waiting for us. So that kind of enthusiasm was something that used to motivate her students. So, and yes, whenever there was any eminent person in the city, she would request and invite them to give a talk at the planetarium, and usually followed by a Jantar Mantar tour, like we saw in Professor Alak's share. And it just sent me back, you know, I became nostalgic seeing those pictures, some very, you know, fond memories of her. And I remember the Indo-French festival in Delhi, where, you know, the French dignitaries came, and I was climbing the sundials, and she was waiting in sun and explaining again and again, that kind of thing I don't think anyone has. So, and not just that, she made our visits to Jantar Mantar as a small picnic. It was a picnic for us, because she will just, you know, create a feast for us. She will actually cook food. She would cook food herself and bring it for all of us, and she'll make us eat that, you know. No doubt, real foodie, like Ajay also said, from somewhere the tray of samosas used to come. It's actually there. She was a real foodie, and her taste for handicrafts, her love for jhulas, gardening as a hobby, these are some minor details about her that we always admired. And she treated us with motherly love. Before the pandemic, we started working on calibrating the observatory, as there was renovation going on by the Archaeological Survey of India. And many students were involved with her for this. So many unfinished projects, and reviving these lost observatories by her was totally incredible. My last engagement with her was during the Gyan Samagam. Though I was not an official volunteer at the SK panel, still when she called me that she need my help for selecting the volunteers, I coordinated, and I'm glad I took that up. Even during the TMT week, she took us all for Jantar Mantar tour. This is one of the pictures from that week. So she guided me, not just professionally, but personally. Even during the lockdown when I got COVID, she would actually text me every day, you know, to get an update. So yes, her loss is a personal loss for me as well. And I still can't believe that she's gone. And going to the planetarium will never be the same. Maybe through this platform today, I will also get some closure. I will always miss her. She was very excited and looking forward to meet her granddaughter. And I spoke to her via text message on the night of 7th May. And she was recovering well. All her students were sending their best wishes for her. And when the news came on 9th May, it had hit all of us very, very badly. Indeed, a significant loss to the entire nation. And my thoughts are with Patrick sir, Ujjwal, Oksana. We'll always miss her, and we'll certainly take her legacy forward in the coming years. And I'm just fortunate, you know, that I have grown up under her umbrella as an amazing astronomer, as an amazing human being. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Megha. Thank you for sharing with us your sentiments and your experiences. So now, Dr. Neeraj Mohan would speak about her POEC work. Neeraj.
Thanks, Sushan. I sent you a slide. Would you be able to share that? Oh, okay, perfect. Thanks. So one would think after hearing all of this, there's nothing much left to say about Rathnasree's work, but that is simply not true, as everybody who know her would understand. It's not very easy to talk about Rathnasree's work with the Public Outreach and Education Committee, or the POEC. It was formed in 2014, and as Ajit said, Rathnasree was the obvious chair. And the formation of the POEC came with a lot of new members with different perspectives, different backgrounds, and I think it's mainly because of her that our various projects which we run now came together and took shape. And she also shaped the philosophy of how we do outreach, right? And it's difficult to imagine outreach in India without Rathnasree. It's very difficult. So to prepare for today's event, I thought I would just make a list of everything she's done. I was looking through all the pages and pages and pages of POEC emails in my inbox going back 7 years, and it brought back so many memories of all of us working together. Some of the emails were about what needs to be done, some were about new ideas she had, but most of the emails I saw from her for the last 7 years have been about students, right? Like everybody mentioned. Can we make some experiments which are quantitative for the students to do? Can we devise some simple calculations for them to do? Can we devise hands-on demonstrations they can do? And constantly worrying about that we may not be doing enough to engage interested students and they may go away, right? So her constant worry was how do we keep them interested, right? And these are the main concerns. Sometimes in the POEC, if she did not get the expected level of response for one of her ideas, she would just go ahead and do it herself, right? And once she got hold of an idea, she liked, and there were many of them which came frequently. The POEC either had to join in or be left behind. She was going to do it anyway. There's something I want to mention, since people had talked about a love of music. During 2018, which is the 150th anniversary of discovery of helium from India, she actually wanted to go back to Andhra Pradesh and write what is called a Burakatha, which is apparently a traditional folk performance art. And she was very sad that she could not do that. The other thing we did was when Kishore Kumar died, we thought we would talk about astronomy, and we wanted to put up YouTube videos of songs online which Kishore Kumar sang on astronomy, and you could see her come alive. She gave us song after song after song of Kishore Kumar which are about astronomy. And if you look at her YouTube page, along with astronomy talks, there are also a lot of Antakshari videos which she played with her family across the world. The POEC activities centering on Jantar Mantar were, of course, completely her creation. And we all thought Rathnasree would be as strong and long-lived as a beloved Yantra, so that's not to be. Bapu Kagol Mela was an inspired project of hers, and I suspect we're not yet actually realizing the importance or the impact of Bapu Kagol Mela had across India. During any POEC event, I think all the POEC members know that we needed to remind her to eat, to drink water, to take rest, to take a medication, because if there were students there, she would be there too, right? And she would not go till the last student went home. Patani Samantha Chandrasekhar challenge to measure the Jupiter-Saturn separation during the Great Conjunction was quintessentially Rathnasree. Every one of us here, I think, from astronomy, at some point or the other, during some meeting or the other, I'm sure we're asked to record a video on some aspect of astronomy you're working on, right? She wanted to use the POEC forum to make numerous video resources for students, be it Meet the Astronomer project she started on Facebook years ago, or Ask the Astronomer thing, which started after a pandemic, or the Astro Addas, which have become very, very popular now because of her. So whenever we used to meet at POEC in our meetings, monthly meetings, she would ask at least 3 things. I remember. How do we create a quantitative component of this project for students? Can we make a hands-on experiment for students based on this concept? And can we somehow bring this into the dome? The dome was her passion, right? And I keep hearing her saying, "Acha, thoda sa quantitative cheese ho sakta hai to acha hoga." And that's something I heard her say many times. So I'll just end by saying that every single outreach event we organize will remind us of her and her passion hereafter. We all lost an amazing friend and a co-traveler, but are very, very grateful to have known her. She was a quintessential public astronomer, a true astronomer for the public. And the public, in turn, I think, loved her deeply. Thank you.
Thank you, Neeraj. Thank you. Thank all the speakers of this segment. Now we would move to segment B, where people who have met or been close to Ratna at different times in her life may have not directly walked with her, but have been around her. And I call upon Professor Rohini Godbole, Padma Shri, from Indian Institute of Science, to speak about her. Rohini.
Hello, Sushan, and hello, everybody. Patrick, it's really sad that I'm talking to you all on this occasion. But as Sushan said, it's really celebrating Rathnasree. That's what we are doing today. I am perhaps the only one in this entire crowd, and maybe Nilima Gupte, if she's around, who are speaking where we have known Rathnasree when she was not Dr. Rathnasree, and also not involved really in astronomy in any big way. But I remember Rathnasree as a, I remember Rathnasree firstly as a young, bright, enthusiastic student who was working with Alak those days. And I had already left the Tata Institute, but I used to go there almost every day. And I want to talk about one aspect of Rathnasree's accomplishments, which I think are not, which nowadays I mean, they were referred to a little bit. Like Alak said, that she was among the first few women students in physics and astrophysics in TIFR. And the one thing I remember actually was that she was, if Patrick can correct me, but she was the first girl student who wanted to have maternity leave during her PhD days. And of course, TIFR being TIFR, there were big discussions. And I remember, I was not in TIFR at that time, but I remember sitting on the tea tables and telling people that, CSIR and DST do give maternity leaves for girl students during their PhDs, and TIFR has to move with times. So I think, she, in some ways, she pushed TIFR to do something which was more women friendly, necessary. But I also feel something else, which, it comes out. And I think this is not just that she is pioneer, she is sort of role model for outreach or for work in astronomy. I think this is for the young girl students in astronomy and astrophysics. To me, this is actually a very pioneering activity, way she led her life as a woman physicist. I mean, firstly, taking her son along and, not worry about childcare, but managing things. And I think that was actually Rathnasree's biggest plus point as I saw it. And later on, between her and Patrick, of course, as every couple, when both people are professionals, they have to decide among themselves how they are going to conduct their lives. And I think Rathnasree, I'm impressed with the way she redefined her life and had this second innings, which was even more stellar, because it was much longer also, if I may say so. And I think there was a suggestion in the chat by Dibyendu that we should have an award or a fellowship in her name. And I would really say that which is a very good idea, but I would really like to suggest that it be there for a woman astrophysicist or an astronomer. And I think, I have heard good words from her teachers. For example, when I talked with Subodh Shenoy about her untimely passing away, he said, she was one of their marker students. They would mark a particular batch by saying, do you remember she was from Rathnasree's batch? And I'm sure Nilima would have some more things to say, so I will not repeat that. And I would once again say that all I remember really of Rathnasree is a very friendly soul, very serious about her work, and really a no-nonsense person. Patrick, I really want to convey my most, I don't know what to say, the deepest sympathies for this very untimely demise of this bubbling personality. And we are all the poorer for it, but I think her legacy is very much there. And I particularly want to emphasize her legacy as a woman astrophysicist and astronomer in India, in an India where women, their role was growing. So this is all really I got to say. Once again, my condolences to Patrick and Ujjwal.
Thank you, Rohini. And you're right. She was still a PhD student when she became a mother. And TIFR had to also, at some point of time, have an apartment for a PhD student with children. Thank you for remembering this.
Thank you, Rohini, for sharing with us a different part of Ratna's life. And thank you, Patrick, for your comments. Now, I would request Professor KP Singh, formerly of TIFR, and now he is associated with ISA Mohali, to speak about Ratna.
Okay. So this is a really sad equation for me personally also, as a family friend. So I came to know Rathnasree when she joined TIFR. She became a great family friend and a colleague. Always inquiring about the family and children whenever we met, especially because her son and my daughter were about the same age. And always a gracious host, however busy she may be, always finding some time to me. So I just like to recount one important collaboration kind of a thing that we struck about 4 to 5 years ago. Sometime in October 2016, I wrote to her that I would like to donate for display at Nehru Planetarium a working prototype of a soft X-ray telescope that was built for Astrosat, and that was tested rigorously by ISRO before qualifying it and therefore getting us through the critical design. This was just 1 year after the launch and 1 year before my retirement from TFR. And I asked her if she could will host it as an exhibit. She readily embraced the idea and not immediately visited TFR within 2 months, and then meticulously went through all the details, about the thing and pictures, had interviews, made a video all by herself. She could put even the low tech to great effect and so on that she used to carry. And anyway, what she actually thought about planned took the whole idea several notches higher. She decided that she'll make a special room and you will arrange for a dry airflow over the mirrors and make available and create an interactive corner which showcases the entire Astrosat and for the public come to visit. Now, because of our great efforts, we have an interactive Astrosat corner where anybody can go and learn about any part of the telescope by just the press of a button and through a voiceover and video display. She all got it done herself. Also had interviews for any aspects through actually payload and designers, Ram Tandon, Dipankar, etc., myself. And you can talking about various technical, scientific aspects. And it was all done and directed by her within 6 months. It was inaugurated November 2017 and was being hosted, being visited by school children. Pretty recently, as far as I know, till Jan 2020 or so. And this will be one of her legacies. And along with all the other creative programs she made for the planetarium, which were worth watching, and I had actually watched some of those programs. I'd like to show just one picture of that corner, if you allow me to share the screen. And so I don't know if this is visible. This is the screen and so on with it's concrete apparently and so on. So yeah, you can see the screen now. So the children.
Yes, we can.
And this was the corner and beautifully done. And there she is, actually testing herself, and you can see the video on the background and so on. And this was a great effort by her and so on. So I go back to what I was saying is and then another unforgettable memory which I'll always have is the guided tour of old Jaipur Observatory that she arranged for me and Gagan, and with her detailed explanation of every jantar that is placed in there. And she told me she has actually written all the explanation which is displayed on the placards which are put up in Jaipur Observatory and so on. And in a hot afternoon when all the staff is gone, we are the only people left, got it open, separately. I mean, we are going to truly miss her, and I convey my sincere condolences to Patrick and Ujjwal. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Professor Singh. And now I would request Professor Prajwal Shastri, currently at ICTS, formerly of IIA, to speak a few words.
Can you hear me, Sushan?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. Us and our country and the global astrophysics and SciComm communities. But I also consider all of us our country and the global community is extremely fortunate that the management of the Nehru Memorial Museum and Library recognized the talent and promise of their senior science educator way back in 1999 and appointed her to a leadership position with authority when she was just 36 years old, a rare feat that the physics community cannot boast of. We will miss her terribly, but she will remain an outstanding example of someone who lived and breathed her science. Farewell, Ratna.
Thank you, Prajwal. Now, I request Professor Yashwant Gupta, Director NCR at IFR, to speak a few words. Yashwant?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
So I think the morning of the 9th of May was a shockingly sad day for all of us, the loss of a very valuable colleague and friend. My association with Rathnasree dates back to the mid-1990s onwards. From around the time she took up this postdoc position at the Raman Research Institute. By then, as we've already heard from others, she had turned her attention to the study of pulsars. I remember she visited NCRA for one of the winter schools, and we found the common ground in our quest for understanding the emission of radio pulsars. And we even actually have a paper written together to study polarization properties of pulsars. And as we've heard, she could easily have continued on her career in pulsars, doing excellent work, and she was really doing well. But clearly she had her heart set out for another calling. And though it was a significant loss for pulsar astrophysics, it was a major gain for astronomy outreach and popularization in the country, as she was shown. My interactions with Rathnasree continued over the years, and every visit to Delhi had an open invitation to come to the planetarium to discuss the latest ideas, often accompanied with a request to give a talk to at the planetarium, interact with the large student community that always managed to attract around her, and then always topped off with trademark samosas and gulab jamun at the end. I remember she asked me to present the work at the GMRT, both the technical and scientific, in a manner that would be understandable to school and early college kids. And that was my first attempt to make a presentation at that level. And I have to thank her for getting me to think about how to present material in a manner that is suitable for the younger generation. It was always great fun discussing plans for outreach for the astronomy community, as much as it was discussing pulsars with her, because as has been said, she never lost her interest in pulsars all throughout her career. She carried that typical enthusiasm and optimistic approach all through her life. It was a trait that allowed her to achieve tremendous success in her outreach endeavors and creating this huge legacy that we have all witnessed to. I remember my last in-person interaction with her quite clearly. It was in January last year when we had the Vigyan Samagam Mega Science event at New Delhi. We wanted a local anchor helping with the exhibition, and when I asked her somewhat hesitatingly, as she had not been part of the SK activities so far, she agreed immediately, readily, and she played an excellent role in supporting the activities and making them a success, along with her band of enthusiasts and volunteers. And my last memories with her are from this visit, when she invited me to the planetarium and took me inside to talk about and show snippets of the new shows related to astronomy in India that she was planning, and how she would like to make a special show on radio astronomy featuring the major national achievements like the Radio Telescope, the GMRT, and so on. And I was as ever taken up with her childlike enthusiasm about the plans and dreams. Unfortunately, some of these plans did not see the light of day and be projected on the dome of the planetarium. And perhaps the greatest service we could render in her memory is to find a way to carry forward her legacy, her incomplete projects and dreams, such that she can look down in peace and satisfaction from the stars and heavens which she has now made her abode. We'll miss you, Rathnasree. And my sincere and heartfelt condolences to Patrick and all the family members. Thank you.
Thank you, Yashwant. Now I request Professor Shomak Rai Chaudhary, Director IUCA, to speak a few words. Shomak.
Thank you. I really don't have any words to express my condolences to Patrick and Ujjwal. Such a great loss, but then you can also see that it was not their family who lost Rathnasree. If you've seen her work with the kids in Delhi and her at work at Nehru Planetarium, you know that she had a much, much larger family. And I won't be surprised if a school kid in Delhi who was a regular in her programs came and said, "I've lost my parent." And this is the sadness of today's occasion. A lot has been said about her, and I feel very, very moved. I'd like to point out just a couple of things that have not been said about her almost obsession with the Jantar Mantars and their place in Indian history and astronomy history. I first encountered this because one of the things that has not been said is that the ASI used to have a science popularization committee, outreach committee in the 90s. I was in charge of it. That was when Vijay Kapahi was the president. And during that time, the Indian Olympiad, Astro Olympiad also started. And the Nehru Planetarium in Delhi has had, as Jasjit pointed out, some amazing directors. All three directors have been amazing. Colonel Singh, then Nirupama Raghavan, and then finally Rathnasree. And all of them worked with us during that brief period in setting up a lot of things that happened then. And that's when I first met Rathnasree. She was making her transition to Delhi, and already I learned about her interest and obsession with the Jantar Mantar. So then I lived in England in the early 2000s, and BBC Radio 4 came to me and said they wanted to do a radio program on Indian legacy in astronomy. And the first person I could think of, I pointed to Rathnasree. And that radio program is still available on the web. If you go to the BBC website, and you'll see it's called Stars in Their Eyes. And they made a half-an-hour show, which was broadcast on World Service on the Jantar Mantars in Delhi, where on radio, Rathnasree brought the Jantar Mantars to life, talking to the BBC correspondent. That is one of the things that would tell you early on, this is 2003. And what a great, effective communicator Rathnasree would be. And she did turn into this amazing mother figure of the school community in Delhi and the public. And I had the great fortune to see her just before the lockdown when I visited her among our many visits to the planetarium, giving a talk. And then we had about 200 kids sitting on the ground listening to our event in the Nehru Planetarium. So these are the people who are mourning Rathnasree now along with us, along with the entire astronomy community. And it is a loss that it is hard to measure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shomakda. Thank you for your words. Now I request Professor S. Sridhar, Director RRI, to speak a few words. Sridhar?
Hi, Sushant. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Fine. So Rathnasree's time at RRI, both her work on pulsars and stay in the RRI quarters have already been nicely described by Avinash Deshpande. I myself was not at RRI at that time. So I'd like to share with you now some of my early memories of Rathnasree. When I was a student at RRI writing my PhD thesis, I attended a school in Pune organized by IUCA. There I met and became friendly with Patrick Dasgupta, who was a sort of mentor to many of us. He had finished his PhD and we were still students. From him, I learned that his wife Rathnasree was in TIFR
also doing a PhD. And I was going to take up a visiting position at TIFR later that year, soon after I submitted my thesis. So this thankfully happened as planned, and I soon met Ratna at TIFR. She was a senior student in the theoretical astrophysics group, very friendly and accessible to all her peers who sought her out many times to talk about their work or personal issues. But she was also extremely short of time then, because in addition to the usual work and duties of a PhD student, she was bringing up a small child, a baby really. So this she did, with good cheer. One thing I remember is the student hostel regulations at that time were such that Ratna was often on the search for rooms to shift into. But she took this in good spirit and somehow managed. We got to hear about it only when she wanted someone or the other to accommodate a few pieces of luggage. So in this context, I got to know Ratna a bit better, and we got talking more often. And I soon discovered a personal connection with her. I learned that not only was she my friend Patrick's wife, but she also happened to be the younger sister of my college mate Uday Bhaskar, who I knew very well. A little later, I also met her other brother, who had dropped in at TIFR. So this somehow made it easier for us to be on more familiar and friendly terms. And this relationship has lasted all these years. So Ratna's demise really comes as a great shock, and I feel a sense of personal loss. So I don't know what else to say, except thank you everyone for listening.
Thank you, Sridhar. Now I request Professor Annapurni Subramaniam, Director, RRI Bangalore, to say a few words.
Hi, everyone. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah.
This is indeed a very sad occasion, but I'm very happy to hear so many aspects of Rathnasree, and we are indeed celebrating her work. And it's really touching, actually. On behalf of all at the Indian Institute of Astrophysics, I convey our deepest condolences and prayers and thoughts to her family, Patrick and Visual, and also to the entire astronomical community. I think some way or the other, everybody has benefited or, be part of Ratna's endeavors for science communication as well as education. Rathnasree has contributed immensely to the spread of astronomy to the society, and therefore all institutions have gained directly or indirectly through her work. And she has left behind a huge legacy and roadmap for continuing her work in the future, and it is all up to the organizations and institutions to carry it forward. For me, I met her first in RRI when she was a postdoc, and I remember Panu running around while we would continue chatting on various topics. I was working on a stellar evolution and large Magellanic Cloud, so I remember discussing a few aspects of stellar evolution and large Magellanic Cloud with her. But I think I remember something else. What I remember was that I was married at that time, and I was trying my hand at managing family and research together. And I used to be very impressed how she was handling the kid, and and not kind of stressed about it. And she took it on her stride. So that really impressed me, and I could see that one can do that. So I think it really impressed me. When looking back, it did leave behind a impact on me for my future career ahead. And I also remember her posting pictures of flowers in her Facebook, and she used to know exactly about what will happen, which kind of season, how the flowers would come, and what is it different about a particular flower in her backyard. So used to be very fond of small things, but very passionate about it. So I remember the infectious smile, the enthusiasm in communicating, and also her down to earth approach. And these all will remain with me forever, I think. And I think it's all up to us to take her legacy forward, and we must do it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Annapurni. Now I request Mr. Arvind Paranjpe, Director, Nehru Planetarium, Mumbai, to speak a few words. Arvind?
Arvind, you have to unmute yourself.
Arvind, can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. It's a little emotional. You see, not to have Ratna on the visible horizon, it's a very personal loss of one of my best friends. Actually, I have no recollection as to when or where I met Ratna first, but somehow she was always there. And my sentiments will not be very different from those expressed here by others. I recollect here a couple of personal interactions I had with her. And that was about 10 years ago at the Indian Institute of Astrophysics in 2010. We were invited by Professor Hassan. And just around that time, I had accepted to join Nehru Planetarium. And so in the evening, after the dinner, when Ratna had come that morning, or previous, I don't recollect really, Ratna came to my room and he said, wanted to talk. But the first thing she asked me was, "Kahin chai milegi kya?" She knew I was in Bangalore for quite some time at Indian Institute of Astrophysics. And at that point in time, I wasn't sure where to go, but I always carry my tea and coffee kit. So I asked her, would you like to have Earl Grey or Darjeeling or something? And she said, koi bhi chalega, chai chahiye bas. And it was, and we had tea and discussed about planetarium and planetarium activities for quite some time. Had a couple of teas more. And that is how tea was something that we've heard from everybody here that how passionate she was and worked tirelessly. But towards the end of the day, I think she definitely wanted some tea. And thereafter, wherever and whenever we were supposed to be together at some meeting or the other related to planetarium, I always carried extra tea bags with me, and she would come and ask for it. She was not very happy. We heard from some people from the planetarium as a role of administrator, and she was the foot soldier. And I really feel her loss. Very recently, as I took over the Nehru Planetarium in Mumbai, we have been trying to, with Ratna and Shailaja, we have been trying to unite the planetariums across the country, and which appear to be, she herself had told me at that time that it will be a Herculean task for all of us. So we still haven't managed. Very recently, just a few weeks before she went away, we were also talking about she shifting to Hyderabad. And there she didn't want it. See, the director of Hyderabad has left, now retired. And she wanted to be, she has a house in Hyderabad. So she wanted to be there in Hyderabad, but she didn't wanted any position. All she said is, Arvind, kuch to aisa karo ki I'll just go to the control room and I'll make programs and programs. And that is all I wanted to do. So the Indian planetarians and those connected with Nehru Planetarium Delhi, we will all remember for a long time to come And as far as I'm concerned, she will be there on the invisible horizon always. Thank you.
Thank you, Arvind. Now I request Professor Nilima Gupte from IIT Madras to speak a few words.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
When she was an MSc student in the University of Hyderabad. So literally I knew Rathnasree when she was 20. And I want to tell you what an impression she made on all of us, because she was so bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and quite different from the general run of students there. Okay. I was very happy to see Professor Joanna Rankin's picture of her, because that's how I remember her, not like all the recent pictures which everybody else has shown. And like Professor Rohini Godbole said, that her batch was remembered by her, and she really was an excellent student. And you must remember that she was an excellent student at a time in a place where there were not many people who were her peers. So that was the first thing. So she was always somebody you remembered. I mean, as I said, I didn't really know her that well, but I still remember her. And what I want to share with you is, in fact, the last time I met her, which was again a very long time ago. And there's a point to this story. And so the last time I met her was really in 1993. And the place where we met was in front of the University Grants Commission, where there was a big shamiana. And there was a big shamiana for all of us who had essentially come there to be interviewed for the UGC research scientist positions. And I met Ratna and Patrick there. I met Sanjay Jain and Nivedita there. Then I was there also with my husband, and we were all on the same quest, that we were all trying to get to the same place. And it was not such an easy task in those days. And so, in fact, Ratna did the ultimate thing, that is, she changed her path completely just so that she and Patrick and the family could be together. And she made such a success of it. It is not easy for an academic scientist to become a science communicator and do it in the way she did. And that she did was a very remarkable thing. So it's a choice which she made. It's a choice which many people made. Nowadays, people don't have to make those choices so much anymore. But I hope in future, I hope her story will remind all of us that these choices should really not, women should really do these things of their choice and not out of the circumstances. So Ratna was a wonderful person. When I heard she had passed away, I was quite shocked, which is, I told you, I have not seen her for so many years, but it really, I mean, she really was a loss. And I'm sure all of you will have felt it even much more than I did. But I hope something will be done to commemorate her memory. And Patrick must be here. Patrick, my sincere condolences to you and your children and your son. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Gupte. Thank you very much. Now I request Professor Dipankar Banerjee, Director, ARIS Nainital, to speak a few words. Dipankar?
Yeah. I was fortunate to come closer to Rathnasree through ASI. In fact, I was the ASI secretary when POAC was formed. And I was immediately, I could realize people have been talking about her infectious smile, but the infectious enthusiasm she had for outreach and education was amazing. So whatever from the day one, all these different programs have been formulated for POAC, along with Neeraj and Aniket and so on, and she guided all along. I will give just a couple of my memories, more recent memories. We organized the IAU symposium in Jaipur, and in fact, when I was submitting the proposal to IAU, there is a mandatory requirement now to have a public outreach event and a training session for any IAU symposium. And obviously, immediately I called Rathnasree that how do we do about it? And since it was in Jaipur, as a venue, immediately she came up with fantastic plans and so on. And I'm so happy that, she spent almost half of the week, stayed with us in Jaipur, conducted several activities, and we had more than 100 foreign participants. We took all of them to Jantar Mantar, and she explained in batches to all these people. So they were all amazed that, whatever they read a little bit about Jantar Mantar and the description what she gave with the proper astronomy and history was, nobody anticipated that. So that was a fantastic experience for me. Even, I must say, I moved to Aries about a year and a half back, and we had a lot of plans together to do. Nainital being closer to Delhi, even within this last 1.5 years, we met actually 3-4 times in Delhi. We were actually in a TV program. I just give another example. I think Devansh has mentioned about her, hands-on skills. So this was on the occasion of the, annular solar eclipse. So in the TV, recording program, she came up with some utensils, and she started explaining in the program. Just took out her bangles, how annular eclipse should look like, different dishes, and then some spanners. So it was quite amazing, how skillful she was, and how enthusiastically she could even go in a live TV recording and explain things for common public. So these are lots of learning examples I think she has left behind for all of us. And I hope the legacy what she has left us for us to follow, and the students particularly, I think we have to carry that on. Devansh also mentioned about the data. In fact, I was giving a lecture in the Astro Adda a few months back. The lecture was only about, say, probably 35-40 minutes, and the Adda went on for another hour. So that also, proves that how much, a anchor person can engage with, people, even in this kind of difficult virtual platform. So that, I think, she was always adapting to the changing, circumstances, whatever tools we have in hand. So that was always there in her mind. I mean, she talked to me even just a few months back that, Dipankar, I heard about this Kodaikanal data. Can we do some project in that for the students? Sunspots rotation, I mean, it's amazing. Always she's thinking about something new, and with the available, resources. I think this has been mentioned a number of times. At different circumstances, whatever resources you have, what best you can do for kids, to reach people, to excite youngsters. So I think this is all a learning lesson. We'll miss her badly, and I hope we can carry on some of the work, unfinished work she has left for us. Thank you, Shushan.
Thank you, Dipankar. So we have come to the end of the second segment. We received a lot of text and audio and video messages from a number of people, many senior in the community and others. Of course, we would not be able to read out or play all of them. So here is a selection of some of those messages that we'll play now.
Message from Professor Jayant Narlikar. Rathnasree, a memory. I had known Rathnasree as a graduate student in the astrophysics group at TIFR. Although soft-spoken and polite, she was firm when defending her point of view. Later, I knew her as the director of Nehru Planetarium in New Delhi. She was dedicated to her work on science popularization. She had various ways of achieving this, and in many cases, her originality of approach showed up. Her untimely death was a great shock to all of us. Mangala and I send our condolences on this occasion.
Friends, we live in very troubled times. friend or a colleague or someone who knew. And so it has been with me. But losing Rathnasree was particularly difficult. I take this opportunity to convey my condolence to Patrick, his son. I first met Rathnasree in 1990 at a pre-GMRT workshop at NCRA. I remember that meeting as though it was yesterday. During every coffee break and lunch break, she latched on to me. I wanted to know everything I knew about low mass X-ray binaries, their evolution, and millisecond pulsars. I generally strike a strong chord with students I encounter or have taught or have guided. And with Rathnasree, our friendship became rather strong and instantaneous. And the main reason was her enthusiasm to learn and to learn and to learn. Soon after she finished her PhD, she spent 2 years with Joanna Rankin at Vermont. And after that, I invited her to the Raman Institute and spend a couple of years there. One of the memories from the period is how I lived it. Rathnasree was deeply involved in her research and used to work very late hours at the Raman Institute. This was particularly difficult for a young son, Manu, who used to sit beside Rathnasree in the computer room doodling and drawing. And what made this even worse was that the computer room was at near freezing temperature. Many times I've had to go and admonish Rathnasree and ask her to take her son home. 8 years ago, a person who was very much in the news at the time was turning 60. And his wife wanted to present him with a nice telescope. And she sought my advice and help in this regard. I contacted Rathnasree, and she was kind enough to get in touch with this person, identify a suitable telescope, and also a vendor. After that, we remained in touch once again. Many times she invited me to come and give lectures at the planetarium, but that never happened. Well, Rathnasree has passed away. I should remember. The pursuit of science has become an industry now. The competition is extremely cutthroat. The pursuit of science is particularly difficult for women, not to mention young mothers. So Rathnasree had to make a decision. 55 years ago, when I was a student at Chicago, Chandrasekhar once said this to me. He said, the only way to evaluate a scientist is to remove all her or his papers from the literature and ask, will it make any difference to the subject? You all know the answer to this question. So Rathnasree decided to combine research with something far more important. During the last 25 years of her life, she dedicated herself to motivating, inspiring, and teaching young children. And she had a great impact. And the effect she had will be multiplied manyfold in the decades to come. How many of us can claim to have done something like that? I will also remember Rathnasree for her most disarming smile, incredibly beautiful eyes, because they were windows to her very warm and wonderful personality. And take care.
Message from Professor Rajaram Nityananda. The Rathnasree I knew for more than 3 decades was so full of life and activity that her sudden passing in such tragic circumstances is shocking even in a time of continuous shocks. In 3 places, and times separated by decades, TIFR, RRI, and Delhi, my family and I have enjoyed the warmth of her home. At RRI, she was a colleague and neighbor, and like everyone around her, I could not miss her intense dedication to her work and just as intense dedication to people. Outreach is not something that comes to all researchers, though many try their hand at it. The qualities to succeed in that area, as she did splendidly, are much rarer than those needed to work in a specific field. She had both and basic human qualities in abundance, making the combination rarer still. She leaves a large gap for her family, friends, and the community. Remembering her in this way may offer some small comfort to all of us.
Hello everyone. It is with a profound sense of loss that we gather today at this memorial for Rathnasree, an accomplished astronomer and an educator par excellence. She had a childlike simplicity and curiosity that defined her and enabled her to connect so successfully to the younger generation. I first met Rathnasree when she joined the Raman Research Institute as a postdoctoral fellow. I did not directly work with her, but had the opportunity to see her work progress and to have discussions from time to time. She initiated
Ishan, your audio is lost. Can you check the audio settings again?
responsibility to carry forward the immensely impactful work that she has been doing. In February, April this year,
My audio was lost for a minute.
Yeah, exactly 1 minute. So you maybe play it from 8 minutes 2 seconds or something like that. That is where roughly audio was lost.
Okay, thank you.
she had done plenty. We traveled together to a Pulsar conference in Sydney in 1996. It was great to see how engaged she was in every talk and the subsequent discussions. Even later, whenever she attended any talk of mine in a meeting, she would have many questions and we would discuss during breaks, and never was enough time to address all of them. I had the privilege of visiting her at the Nehru Planetarium in Delhi, where she described the various programs that she had been conducting and introduced me to some of her young students. It was delightful to experience their infectious enthusiasm and curiosity and the admiration they had for Rathnasree. To them, this love is irreparable. It is now our collective responsibility to carry forward the immensely impactful work that she has been doing. In February, April this year, we ran an open online course on pulsar astrophysics from NRC Ayuka. Apart from recorded lectures, the course featured weekly Zoom interactions with participants. To my pleasant surprise, Rathnasree would join in at these discussions and bring her experience to bear on addressing many of the issues raised by the participants. In addition, she also answered a number of questions posted by the participants on the online discussion forum. It was wonderful to have her among the resource persons in this course. Sadly, that was the last interaction I had with her. I never knew that she would be taken from us so suddenly, so soon. To her husband, Patrick Dasgupta, a good friend, and the others in the family, there are no words to express our shock and grief. May them be given strength to bear this senseless and untimely loss. Thank you very much.
Message from Professor Ranjan Gupta. I am still unable to come out of the shock that Rathnasree is no more. She was in several planetarium advisory committees where we worked together for upgrades of this planetarium. I was also in the committee some years back when Delhi Planetarium was due for an upgrade. Last I met her was in early 2020 at Patna, just before the pandemic started. She was a remarkable astronomy outreach person and always had captive audience during ASI meetings, including the one organized at Jaipur. We will miss all her advices and company at these events. May her soul rest in peace and her family has the strength to overcome their personal loss.
I join you all in feeling the utmost sadness in the sudden passing of Rathnasree. Despite so many days passing by, it hasn't quite sunk in and is very hard to accept. We know the world has been battling strange times, but this has been too big a price to pay. I work on pulsars, an area that Rathnasree also worked on. The very first time I met her was when I was a graduate student at RRI. She was visiting Joanna Rankin, who was there on a short visit. They both gave seminars on their latest work. I vividly remember this otherwise very unassuming lady coming across so confident when she was presenting, and the depth of her knowledge was so evident. That was so striking and made a strong impression in me. I believe she was the first pulsar postdoc I may have met. I also recall Joanna Rankin raving about Rathnasree's abilities and talent so much when I was chatting to her. I almost felt that the bar was probably too high for someone like me to join the field. Rathnasree has been phenomenal in the field of public outreach. As we all know, this thing is for truly passionate people. You need a lot more dedication and patience than many of us may have for doing for research. But it's also something that can be truly gratifying. Transforming science outreach in a country like India is no small feat. And Rathnasree has had a massive influence on many youngsters and students across the country. As you may all know, Rathnasree worked on binary pulsars when she was a graduate student. We all like binary pulsars because they teach us a lot. Interestingly, the ones that teach us the most are also the ones that we get to see the least. I can't help but see a parallel here. She went away too soon, but with a lasting impact in the field of astronomy outreach. My thoughts are with the Patrick and family at this time. Patrick was one of my teachers in the graduate school. He taught us quantum mechanics, and I still remember a young girl from those days. Once again, my deepest condolences to Rathnasree's family.
Message from Dr. Sunita Nair. Rathnasree and I overlapped for about 4 years, from 1988 to 1992, as PhD students in the theoretical astrophysics group of the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research in Mumbai, where she was working on binary star evolution and I in cosmology. It was a point in time where the group had precisely 3 students, all women, the third being Sarvani Basu, now a professor at Yale University. Ratna was our senior most, already married to Patrick Dasgupta, now a professor at Delhi University, who had been a fellow student. Ratna was exotically beautiful and quiet and serious by nature, unlike us juniors who were much given to hilarity and little mischiefs. I'm sure she would have gently put us in order if we had all shared an office, but hers was a safe distance from ours. So we met at talks and in the canteens of the TIFR. One tea time, Ratna introduced me to Mari Biscuit, butter sandwiches, the very idea of which struck me as repugnant at first sight, and I told her so. She patiently put one together, pressed the biscuits gently, showed me a clutch of butter worms snaking through the holes in the upper biscuit, and challenged me to replicate that. Believe you me, it is an art. I destroyed several biscuits in this pursuit, which I then had to eat despite my reservations, until I finally achieved the right combination of butter temperature and manual pressure. When in the middle of her PhD, Ratna had a son Ujjwal, new to us all. Managing both her studies and the energetic little fellow in hostile circumstances became quite a task. We all tried to lend a hand. One of the students loved to babysit him. Another would carry him all over the institute, introducing him to the vast collection of art on display. I was the appointed chicken nugget supplier. Soon he would identify me as Z. Ken. One evening, we started to see Ratna in close pursuit of the now toddling Pannu, shushing him with all her might, but to no avail. Pannu was singing at the top of his voice, "Homie Wawa Black Sheep, have you any wool?" Ratna was sure she would get thrown out of the institute. It was only the beginning of a series of creative parodies by Pannu. Ratna, being an Andhraite, was very fond of a pickle of gongura leaves, and whenever a consignment came to her from home, she would bring it down to the canteen and share it generously with the rest of us. One taste, and I was totally cured of it. It took 2 days for the fire in my mouth to be fully extinguished. When Ratna was done with the TIFR and postdocing in Vermont with Professor Joanna Rankin, one of the students offered to fetch her a bottle of the precious pickle, since he had to attend an international conference nearby. He checked it into the aircraft's luggage hold in a bag along with the poster he had prepared for the presentation. Sadly for him, by the time he landed, the poster had overindulged in the pickle, which had leaked out in the depressurized hold and was in no fit state to be seen. Once Ratna had shifted to Delhi, I didn't meet her very often, but from the few occasions that I did, it was evident that she had found her meteor. When she talked about her work at the planetarium, one could sense the current of inspiration flowing through her from the sparkle in her eyes. It seemed like the perfect match. We last met a few years ago when she had come to Pune for a workshop, and we spent hours chatting. Just as in days of yore, she all but unchanged by the years gone by, still as earnest, as transparent, as sincere as the student I remembered, as given to reflection and observation as ever, as she trawled through her many experiences, interviewing them with her own perceptions and with quotes from the books she had read. Truly, she had, with passion made of her work and inspiration, a beautiful life. She has left the party all too soon. The night was still young, but I am sure that her fire lives on in the young folk whose lives she has touched, whose dreams she has nourished. My heartfelt condolences in this terrible time to Patrick and to Ujjwal and his young family. Message from Dr. Ashwin Shekhar. I remember her as someone with a huge zeal and enthusiasm in communicating astronomy to people of all ages. She was an amazing brand ambassador for astronomy and managed to inspire a lot of young minds from all walks of life. May her good soul rest in cosmic peace. Om Shanti.
नमस्कार, मैं रमेश शिकारा, सीनियर टेक्नीशियन, डायरेक्टर नेहरू तारामंडल डॉक्टर रत्नाश्री के अचानक निधन पर बहुत ज्यादा दुखी मन से श्रद्धांजलि अर्पित करता हूँ। भगवान उनकी आत्मा को शांति दे। हम सभी तारामंडल में डॉक्टर रत्नाश्री के साथ 1996 से एक टीम वर्क कार्य करते हुए उनकी कार्य कुशलता व कार्य निष्ठा व भी शब्द कहे जाएं वो कम है। वो हमेशा ऑफिस वर्क के साथ साथ स्टाफ वेलफेयर का भी बहुत ज्यादा ध्यान रखती थी। मैडम के टीम लीडर के नेतृत्व में हमने ऑफिस वर्क व आउटरीच एक्टिविटी बापू खबल मेला के दौरान आउटरीच एक्टिविटी सिटी में जगह जगह कार्य करते हुए हमेशा घर जैसा माहौल महसूस किया। आउटरीच एक्टिविटी के दौरान वर्कलोड ज्यादा होने व एक्टिविटी सुपर होने के बाद अक्सर मैडम हमें ट्रीट भी देती थी। मैडम रत्नाश्री की याद तो हमारे मन व दिमाग से कभी नहीं जाएगी, लेकिन उनके थॉट्स व कार्यशैली को ध्यान में रखते हुए प्लानेटेरियम स्टाफ टीम वर्क कार्य करते हुए उनकी याद में अपना 100% देते रहने की पूरी कोशिश करेंगे। थैंक यू।
Friends, we have now sort of come to the end of this meeting. It is our good fortune that Ratna's family, Professor Patrick Dasgupta, who is a member of astronomy community itself, and their son, Ujjwal, whom many of us knew when he was a little boy. They are joining us in this meeting. And now I request Professor Patrick Dasgupta to say a few words for us. Patrick.
Thank you very much. Am I audible, Sushant?
Yes, yes, you are.
First of all, I thank with my heart ASI for organizing this memorial meeting for my late wife, Rathnasree. And my heart fills with sincere gratitude for all who spoke and shared their memories of my late wife, Rathnasree. I vividly remember the first time I met Rathnasree when in 1986, she was selected as a PhD student at Tata Institute of Fundamental Research. And it was evident to me that she was a very, very different person. She was bright, no doubt, but she was also completely genuine and had a very tender heart with a lot of care for everyone around her. And her interests were wide, whether it is literature, music, or very old films. And it is in fact the love for literature and music that drew both of us closer. And I was extremely lucky to have been her husband. She was a caring wife, a caring mother, and anyone who has had interactions with her knew how caring she was. She would feel and understand little inconveniences felt by others. She was extremely sincere about her research work. She was a very quick learner. She would pick up new technology, new computer software programs very fast. And when she joined as Nehru Planetarium, the gusto with which she took up her work was amazing. It was as though she was taken back to her teen times when she had become an avid amateur astronomer when she was in her college. And probably the reason why she threw her body and soul into the planetarium work was because she felt that she is reliving her teenage years when she was fascinated looking at the sky through a telescope. Just a few months back, she was very excited about the giant pulses from some of the pulsars that have been observed, and she had some idea about the coherent emission mechanisms that could possibly give rise to giant pulses. She was also interested to know whether there was a sweep in the polarization, whether there was a mode changing in the polarization, and we intended to do some work together. Unfortunately, that cannot be so. She also had several new ideas concerning historical aspects of Indian astronomy. She particularly found out that some of the temples, older temples, have Ashtagraha on the top of the entrance door instead of Navagrahas. And she wanted to find out what was the historical reasons why Ketu was not depicted with the other grahas in the Indian system. She wanted to do some research and work on this. Similarly, she was interested in the historical aspects of one of the early women astronomer of India, namely Padsha Begum of the Awadh kingdom. She wanted to carry out more research. These are also unpublished. And furthermore, she was not only an avid astronomer and astrophysics researcher, she was very good in writing short stories. She has, in fact, published 2 or 3 short stories that depict her keen observation of children who suffer due to unfortunate circumstances. She was very fond of children, and her face will light up the moment she would see children. Obviously, all of you have described different facets of her personality. And I can only say that we were lucky to have Rathnasree in our family, and both Ujjwal, I, and of course, the other family members, we would deeply miss her. I therefore thank all of you once again for organizing this memorial meeting and speaking about her, sharing your loving thoughts and memories. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Patrick, for being able to join this meeting. And now I would like to ask Ujjwal to say a few words.
Thank you so much. And yes, thank you. Thank you to all the speakers for your kind words and for all the memories of my mother from her days in Vermont to RRI, IUCA, to TIFR, to her days in the MSc, and to, of course, her work in the planetarium and with the Amateur Astronomy Society. All of these are memories I share, and that's because. That's because she had to deal with so many challenges, both at work and also taking care of me, and that kind of was how she dealt with life. She just took on all challenges and just did them anyway. And yeah, that it was my absolute privilege to be with her in these times, to just experience it as a child, and that's how I got to know so many of you who spoke today. And yeah, it's a great loss for me, and it's a great loss for everyone here. But at the same time, I look back and reflect on the privilege that she bestowed on me by just making me a part of her amazing life in that way. And she basically, for her life was in her work and in other people, including her family, including just just about everyone she met and interacted with. She could make family members just through her like warmth and care, and that's how she touched so many people and impacted. I mean, it's truly inspirational. And I think like she brought the family together at the very end when everyone was just desperately trying whatever we could to help her out. And till the end, like when we felt the defeat of not being able to do that, she inspired us to just continue doing good. And like the family tried to just continue that work on, because people right now just need it, by working with foundations like Turn Your Concern into Action, which was initiated by Swati, who is my mother's niece, and like all of us just pitched in, and there's just many other contributions that everyone is doing just to keep up the positivity, and that's how we can deal with this, and that's how we can move forward in life. And it was so heartwarming to hear from all of you that you feel like she inspired you to carry on the work of popularizing astronomy, which was indeed her mission. She really felt that science is not about like a few elites who might like know and understand science. Science should be understood by everyone. And and I think that is what we like, that is what humanity needs going forward. Like what is happening right now in India and in the world is terrible. And it's a terrible crisis that happens when we don't understand science. And it might be medical science in this case, but this will happen again and again, like whether it's climate change, whether it's like at the core of it, astronomy is a science which humanity needs for not only for like fulfilling maybe some purposes of our life, but just for basic survival too. So like, yeah, that I think she has inspired all of us to just keep doing good in life and keep trying to contribute more to these aspects. And yeah, and to see that in action is what will make is what will like compensate for our loss and make us feel the positivity of her going forward. She's truly like she gave everything into her work and into her family and burnt herself out, but she's become a star now. So yeah, that's I just hope that the inspiration I feel from her is something that you all feel and share. And again, thank you so much for all of your kindness and for your warmth. It really means a lot to me and to everyone in our family.
Thank you, Jal. Thank you so much for being able to be with us today. Now I request Professor Aniket Sule, the chair of POEC, to summarize and conclude the meeting. Aniket.
Thank you, Sushan. We for last nearly 3 hours we have heard about many different aspects of a wonderful person. Those who knew her from the early days as an astronomer, a graduate student, and then postdoc at TFR or Vermont or at RRI, they came to know about the new things she did after in her later life. People like us who knew her mainly for her outreach work, we came to know about her important scientific contributions. And so the lesson which we probably can take home from all these memories is, if you have will and if you have passion, you can do many different things in this one wonderful life. And probably that is the message we would like to take home, and we would like to definitely honor her legacy, as many of you would have suggested in the chat. Definitely we'll come up with a plan which will be befitting all memory for her. Thank you all for joining and sharing your experiences of and her memories. Thank you all.
Thank you, Aniket and Sushant for organizing this.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks everybody for having joined this program. We really cherish all your words.
My sincere thanks to everyone for joining this meeting. Thank you.
IIT इंदोर मध्ये ती खगोल मेला केलेला.
Thank you everybody for joining in. And we end the meeting today here. Thank you.
Thanks, Sushant, Aniket, and